Hello, this is Don Wunsch. I'm the Mary K. Finley, Missouri Distinguished Professor of Computer Engineering at Missouri University of Science and Technology. And we are in Singapore today. Today is December 9th, about noon, 2014. And we are at the Extreme Learning Machine Conference 2014. And we just had keynotes by myself and the person that I'm about to introduce. But before we do that, sitting behind the camera is our host. And so come around, MH. MH is the organizing chair of the conference and a dear old friend. So yeah, you're in the picture. So thank you very much. The conference is going really well. You've done a
I'm
fantastic
so glad
job.
you can make it.
Yeah, it's and it's a doubly historic event.
That's right.
So thank you so much for your help, and thanks for sticking around to hear the interview. It's more fun when we have an audience.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, and so today I'm here to introduce Jose Principe. Jose is an IEEE Neural Networks, Computational Intelligence Society Neural Networks Pioneer Award winner, among many other distinctions and honors. He was also the kickoff keynote speaker at the conference today. And so what I'd like to start out doing is to ask you to tell us a little bit more about I know that you also are the holder of an endowed chair, so your full glorious title and your institution and all that.
All right. So I am right now Distinguished Professor of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Florida. I'm Bell South Professor. I am also the founding director of the Computational Neuroengineering Laboratory that I created in 1992. So it's been a long time with a title that at the time nobody understood. But I think that today computational neuroengineering tells a lot of what. So it was a bet that was successful in the sense that I was able to predict the direction of what computational intelligence can do, and the current work to study the brain and the importance of engineering to be able to do exactly this linkage.
Good. By the way, we'll have to speak fairly loud because the microphone's embedded in the camera.
Oh, it's there,
right
so I may have to speak louder.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'll do.
And you're about to go on sabbatical here in Singapore
That's correct.
With which institution?
I'm going NUS, National University of Singapore. Yes, I applied for a sabbatical, because I realized that this probably is going to be my last sabbatical. In 7 years, probably nobody will give a sabbatical to me because that right now it's competitive, and you have to give priority to young professors, and I think it's a very good idea. But I'm here. I started my sabbatical in the fall, and I stayed in Portugal, and I'm coming in January to Singapore. And the goal of this sabbatical is really to write another book on non-parametric estimators of statistical dependence. It's an area that I've been working on. I think there is need to put together a textbook in this area, and so that is the goal.
Great.
Yeah.
So those are the institutional affiliations. Jose, would you tell us about your education and training?
Okay. All right. So everything started in Portugal. I had I attended the University of Porto, in the electrical engineering department, and I graduated from there. And I had a very brief specialization in Nuclear Science Institute in Lisbon, and that opened my interests, in pursuing further research. I'm very curious, and being in an environment of studying particles and all of that really made me think that I needed to go forward for a graduate education. And so I came to the U.S. for a master's degree. And my interest was in, effectively, it was in microwaves. And so when I arrived at the department at the University of Florida, Department of Electrical Engineering, the professor that I was supposed to work with was on sabbatical.
Oh.
So the graduate coordinator told me, no, but there is this wonderful area called digital signal processing. It's just starting, and it's a good time for you to rethink your specialization. And I thought, oh, interesting. I already knew a little bit about digital signal processing. That is a great opportunity. So I went from microwave to digital signal processing, and all the rest of my education has been basically in the signal processing area.
That probably set microwave research back a half century.
Well, it's very interesting, and this I wonder sometimes, when students come, and ask, I want to do this, I always tell them, okay, you should pursue it, but be open for other suggestions, because if you are interested in further your education, you really can probably do it in many, many different areas. But this was a short, so this is just for the masters. Then I went back to Portugal because this was the time there was this was 1974, so there was a revolution in Portugal, that really deposed the dictator. So I thought it was a great opportunity to help the country. So I went back, and of course nobody cared about me, but but it was interesting that I got an appointment as assistant at the University of Aveiro, where I stayed for 3 years, and then I came back to the U.S. to complete the PhD.
And back to Florida?
Back to Florida.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm a Florida, and
Right.
right now I am in Florida. See, so this has been really a kind of an attractor for my
Really
career.
like it
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
very nice. I think the environment was and is still very good, and at the time we had a wonderful department, with very, very well-known figures, Julius Stahl, for instance, was, Don Childers was in the faculty, Rudy Kalman was in the faculty, so there was really a lot of important people, and it was very exciting environment. So I completed my PhD in '79, and then I went back to Portugal, where I became a full professor in '85. So I spent my first career exactly in Portugal. About the topic of my dissertation, it's very interesting because I was one of the microprocessors just were introduced, 16-bit microprocessors at the time, and I was interested in brain waves, in the electroencephalogram, epilepsy, sleep, and so on. And so my dissertation was exactly the development of one of the first microprocessor-based real-time systems for epilepsy detection.
Wow.
So it is very interesting that at the time, with a 16-bit microprocessor with 1 megahertz of clock, 8 kilowords of RAM, I was able to do real-time detection of very mild epilepsy in 4 channels of EEG.
Wow.
So you see that it's a big difference when you go from 8 kilo words for real-time processing to this. But so this was very, very challenging, but it was also very, very important for me because you could only do that if you really understood the compromises that you have to do, what was important for processing, what was accessible. And so this really was an excellent opportunity.
Wow. I imagine a lot of the people researching epilepsy time series signals will benefit from going back to that paper.
Yeah,
Was that your first paper?
My first paper, yeah. Well, my first paper was on implementations of digital filters
Oh.
on microprocessors.
Oh,
So this
okay.
was in, I think, '79. Okay, so
Okay.
that was my first paper. The results of my dissertation appeared in '82.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When did you get your doctorate?
So it was in '79.
Oh,
'79.
good, good. So you've anticipated some of my questions. So your first job in engineering was at that nuclear facility
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
Lisbon, right?
And I was developing signal processing, but with analog electronics. You know, so you had to capture you had to capture a particle and measure its decay time. It has to be real time, of course. So I developed an electronic gadget, using electronic circuits. Everything was analog at the time. And so that gave me some experience on electronics.
What would you say was your first paper that used some form of computational intelligence? Do you remember the title of that, or?
All right. So I think that I got very much interested, because of the difficulty of extracting information in the EEG, of modeling, right? And I think that my first paper that has the ingredients of computational intelligence was a paper where I proposed a belief automaton to do sleep staging. And this was using the theory of evidence, okay, where I used membership functions that were kind of fuzzy membership functions, and I had a small reasoning system that would be able to cope with the variability of the UGC. And that was, this paper was probably published in '85.
Do you remember the title or approximate?
I think it was a belief automaton for sleep staging. It was in the IEEE Transactions on Environmental Engineering.
Good, good.
Yeah. But I'm not so sure, about exactly the titles and the dates.
So I'm going to wind back even a little bit further. You mentioned you did a bachelor's in EE. What persuaded you to go that direction to study engineering?
Engineering, yeah. I mean, I'm very curious, and I think that probably came from my grandfather. My grandfather was a very important figure in the family, and he thought that the future was really in more technical oriented professions. I have a brother. My brother is a medical doctor, and I'm an engineer.
Wow, it sounds like your grandfather was a very wise man. What was his name?
Yeah, it's my name, Jose, and like me, and his middle name is Maria Principe.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
He's a very interesting person. Self-made man.
What did he do?
He was an industrialist. He had factories of textiles.
Wow. That's fantastic.
But I think that he was really the person that kind of steered me towards engineering. But I like it a lot, as I said. I'm curious, in particular physics, and biology. I love those disciplines, and mathematics. So it was, I think, a good fit.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good. Wow. So you talked a little bit about your interest in computational intelligence for epilepsy signals, and so that was around the early '80s.
Early '80s, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Early '80s. So it was not a lot of people at the time doing this type of work.
And so primarily neural nets for you at that time.
Well, so what happened is that after I reached the full professor position in Portugal, there was this, I started hearing about neural networks, and I thought, oh, amazing, because I'm interested in the brain and in computational intelligence. This would be a fantastic mix of the two. And it turns out that it was very difficult in Europe at the time to pursue work in that area. So I thought that it was a good opportunity to take a sabbatical, come to the US and study neuroscience. Okay, so that was really when this interest in neural networks started. It was around 85, 86, and then I came in 87. I took a sabbatical year, and then I never went back to Portugal, frankly. So that was the time where I thought that the resources that were available in the US versus the resources I had available to do research in Portugal are so different that I think that I thought that here was the place to really pursue my research.
Good.
And then I stayed from 87 until now at the University of Florida.
Well, this reminds me of another thing that I want to make sure to ask. So I know that you're a recipient of the IEEE Computational Intelligence Society Pioneer Award for Neural Net Pioneer.
Yes.
I also know that you're a recipient of the International Neural Network Society Gabor Award. I nominated you for it successfully. And so these are very familiar. Of course, you're an IEEE fellow. You also received an important award from the IEEE Biomedical Engineering.
Yes,
Society.
the Career Achievement Award. It is the highest, award of the society. And I did this, because of my work exactly on epilepsy. At the time, I was very much interested in predicting epileptic seizures, with a group at Florida and elsewhere in the States. That work and work on the real-time sleep staging and things, it was considered important. So it was really a great honor, to receive also the career achievement from them.
And you also served as president of the International
That's
Neural
right.
Network Society. I had the great privilege of serving as president-elect under you.
Yeah, that's right. I remember the good times.
Yeah. And so, are there a few other things that we're leaving out that we should make sure to mention?
No, I think those are the pinnacles of my career. In particular, the Pioneer Award really, I think, is the pinnacle of my career because if you look at the list of names that have received the award, but really my peers, the persons that I admire, that I read the paper, that I liked. So it's very nice to feel at the same group.
And that's one of the great things for the students to realize, that you come to these conferences and you see these big shots up there giving the keynotes and things like that, that will be populated by some subset of those students.
Exactly.
What inspires you really is a glimpse into your own potential future. So, yeah.
I totally agree. I think that I have really focused all my activity in the research. I have had many invitations to go to managerial positions in academia, but I always said no, because I really think that it's interaction with the students that really it's the important point of our role. And I already graduated 81 PhD students.
Oh my goodness, that's fantastic! Wow.
81.
When did number 81 get then?
In fact, it was last year before. It was in the spring of 2014.
Who's number 81?
81 is Austin Brookmeyer. He worked on the repair project, the DARPA-funded project, and his work is excellent. It's very, very nice because we had to analyze multi-scale brain activity using spike trains and also local field potentials. And so I think the multi-scale is very important to understand the brain, and so we did an excellent on that topic.
Good.
So you see, these numbers keep on increasing.
That's right.
I have 10 more that are my students, so that's going to be 91.
Wow.
So it's going to be close to 100.
As long as they keep their advisor happy.
Yeah, I enjoy very much. It's really, I have to say this, to me, it's a privilege to work with intelligent people.
Of course, yeah, that's one of the great joys of this
Yes.
line of work.
Yeah.
So, what was the major challenge you faced in your pioneering research?
Well, I mean, several. You know, I like things that I don't know. I'm attracted for what I don't know, and sometimes this, of course, puts you out in a limb. You know, and so I have faced quite a bit of challenges. You know, but you know, my approach to research has always been to look at the fundamental assumptions. And because, as you know, mathematical driven work, we always put a lot of assumptions for, to develop our mathematical theories. The example is stationarity, Gaussianity, and things like that. And it turns out that my experience with biomedical signals showed me that the signals out there in the world are nonlinear, have a nonlinear origin, are non-Gaussian, and they are time variable. So this really, created in my mind, the need to go beyond this established assumptions. And I think I can trace my scientific path basically to try to break each one of those assumptions.
Oh.
So that is what if looking back at what I did, I started by, the problem of Gaussianity. I think is needs to be solved, because most of the signals really are not Gaussian, in particular biological origin, and the nonlinearity. So the nonlinear signal generation, I think, is very important, and this is exactly what neural networks does. So neural networks really help us conquer nonlinearity, right? Mm-hmm. But the Gaussianity is a different story. So in order to be able to conquer Gaussianity, or to lift this assumption of Gaussianity, I decided to use information theory. Mm-hmm. Because, if I can describe the probability density function, with entropy and major information and divergence, then I don't put any assumptions on the structure of it. So this was the second level up, And non-stationarity is really the most difficult of them all, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where I think the online learning methods that I'm presently working on are critical, right? Of course, when you have an online learning method, you are really tracking the statistics of the signal, right? Online. Of course, statistics may change faster than your tracking ability, and that's a problem, but at least in principle, I see that as a way of being able to really work with any real-world signal that is not stationary. So that I would say those are the three things that kind of oriented my research.
And so would you say that those are the contributions that give you the greatest satisfaction, or is there one that you can pick out?
I think that of course I'm always interested in the future, not what I did in the past, So I still think that there's a lot of things that need to be done in this area, in particular in the development of machine learning algorithms, that are more, that are able to work with the complexity of the world. And so I think that this is right now what is my focus, and I hope that I can demonstrate that it's possible to have machines that can bootstrap their knowledge through unsupervised type of techniques. So, but this is still in the future. But I would like to. There is one important sentence that I read in a book by Joachim Fuster. That is a computational cognitive scientist. He said to me one thing in one of his books that intrigued me tremendously. He said the following: perception is memory updating.
Perception is memory updating.
That is exactly what this puts a huge problem in front of us. This is chicken and egg problem, right?
Right.
What comes first, perception or memory?
Uh-huh.
How can you bootstrap a system that is able to perceive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And very likely you have to have an architecture of a computational system, very complex, that uses memory, that uses attention, that uses a lot of other things. And so this idea that the computer vision idea that the information is in the pixels, that's probably wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We see what we want to see. So we really have to have first the goal of looking at something, to see, to extract information on the pixels.
Otherwise, there's just too much information.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Too much information. And this is the reason why, we, the biological organisms are so in tune with the environment, is that they have totally different, the interaction and the goal-oriented behavior is key to really understand the complex world. And unfortunately, we don't do that. So this is the last thing that I'm very much interested now to do, is see if we could build computational frameworks, that mimic in some respects what we know that biology is doing.
What do you think the impact that either the IEEE CIS or its predecessor, the NNS or the NNC even, the Neural Net Council, or the International Neural Network Society for that matter, you've been involved with all of those. So what do you think that the impact that the existence of these societies and the conferences and things that they've put on journals, what do you feel the impact has been on you and your program at Versity?
I mean, I really think it's an attractor. It really is, in the field of engineering, it really has been an attractor, to focus the attention on the importance of more biological, plausible, ways of creating intelligent systems. And I think that is very important. I think that INNS and CIS really are complementary in a sense, because I see INNS with the participation of computational neuroscientists, stronger than in CIS. CIS is more of an engineering side of things. That is very important, as you know, because we need to create. There is a lot of problems in engineering and in control that really requires this type of methodologies. And I think CIS approach is very practical, right? And so I think that there is a fundamental component there. But in terms of more of frameworks to design this computational intelligence, I think that the mix in INNS appeals me more, right? Because you have this cross fertilization with neuroscientists, and so I think that they really should coexist, because their goals are different, and they are complementary. So I'm really very in fact it's an honor to be part of both societies.
Good. And so how about your impact on those communities? We talked about your presidency, of course, and you've been on the boards of both of those organizations.
Exactly.
Are there some other comments that you have about the impact?
Well, I think that both societies, they organize differently, and I think that bringing in new blood, I think, is one of the important aspects of all these societies, and I think that the opportunity I had at the INS, I tried to exactly bring, or extend the footprint of the society, to make alliances with other, societies, neural network societies in other countries. And right now in CIS, I think that my interest is really in bringing young talent, attract young talent to the society, because I think this will be the future of the society. So I always like to delegate, give importance to young people, because I think that's the way that societies flourish.
I can attest to that.
Yeah.
When I was president-elect, you delegated some important things that I felt it was a great honor to pursue that. And so, yeah, so that definitely is your style. And so, you have anticipated some of the questions I was going to ask, but how do you envision the evolution of computational intelligence technologies, any confluence of them, and any new entry?
Well, I think that I'm very attracted by the methods, right? But I think that in particular at the current state of affairs, I think that the implementation, the implementation platforms are extremely important. In particular with big data and all of that, I think that they are stressing the capability of both the methods that we are currently using, the structure of the solutions that we are proposing, like classification. I think classification is really rather artificial, framework. Why? Because most of the times you don't know the number of classes.
Mm-hmm.
And so the importance of the unsupervised learning is key to all this, right? So I see that moving towards, unsupervised methods and reinforcement learning methods is going to be, I think, the future of the things that we need to address a little better in the methods side, and also in the terms of platforms, with this parallelization, with the cloud and things like that. I think we have tremendous opportunities to really utilize our learning techniques, and put them in systems on the web. I think that this really is one of my visions that I think I'm going to do. I'm start already seeing.
Yeah, it is happening.
Yeah.
I agree, and it's extremely important.
I think that it's very important, and this is where I think CIS should strengthen its presence, in this type of areas. But we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Good. Do you predict any scientific or technological breakthrough involving computational intelligence technologies?
Well, today, for instance, I talked about something that I was unexpected to me if I report my frame of mind in '87. This idea of having convex universal learning machines in '87 was unthinkable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we were chained to the multi-layer perception for universality, right? But then we had the problems of creating, non-convex performance surfaces, that were very difficult to solve. And we have now class of methods, that they are universal and they are convex. So I really think that the point that I'm trying to make is that these things kind of take time to develop this type of solutions. Very seldom, but it occurs, right? But very seldom you have a single piece of evidence that really transforms, drastically. And so I think that in that respect, I think I see more emphasis on the architectures than really on this methodological algorithms. The architecture is what I think is going to be the next level of effort and where I think we can have, exactly, the breakthroughs that you mentioned.
Okay, great. Well, so do you have any final comments for this interview?
Well, I mean, it wasn't, frankly, I was not expecting it, but I really want to thank you, Don, for proposing and implementing this. And what I like to say is that I enjoy very much talking about science, talking about engineering with the young generation. And, so it will be important to have people that are listening to in the future to this interview, that really they, let them think, that the future is really where you should be. You should be putting the emphasis. You should always have kind of a 5-year plan. What the things you would like. You should always have a long list of things that you would like to do. Because sometimes, you may be able to implement and reach the innovation that you plan. So I'm an optimist. I think there is no other alternative, frankly.
Yeah.
But you have to know where you are, what you are thinking. I think that is the final comment that I think. This idea, you have to plan. You have to plan. You have to look at the 5-year plan, and then from that start putting your reference points that you should attack. Because this idea of going forward without thinking, time is our most precious resource. And it turns out that we spend half of our life simply not caring about time, right? And so at my age, I really think that time is really the most precious resource, and we have to be very, very, very careful in how you handle it. There are windows of opportunity that we should really, use. Otherwise, we lost it forever.
Well, I really appreciate your investment of time in this interview. I think it was a wise investment of time. I fully anticipate that there will be people looking at this video maybe a century or more from now, and so that we're living in a very exciting time.
Yes.
It would be like meeting the great physicists a century or longer ago, and the amazing contributions that are being made right now, and people will be looking back at the contributors to this field. So thank you very much for taking
my
the
pleasure.
time for this interview.
Okay, thank you very much, Don.
Yeah.
We'll keep in touch.
Okay.
So finish.